Good evening, my students. We will try and correct the activity together. So, in the first part of the worksheet, we have this question. Mostly, you will pick it out from the text. Using your knowledge, the first one, name the different nutrients. We already know what are the nutrients that are present in the small intestine and indicate their target. Where do they want to go? So they are amino acids, fatty acids, glycerol, and glucose. Their target, body cells. Now pause the given problem. It is written over here. They wrote they are ready to move to all body cells. But how? This is the question. So the problem is, how can these nutrients move to all body cells? It should end with a question mark. Pick out the three characteristics of the intestinal wall: large surface area, enriched with blood vessels, and thin. The wall itself is thin. Referring to the above characteristic, predict the role of the small intestine. What is the role? Simply, what are we studying? We are studying intestinal absorption. So its role to absorb nutrient absorption to the blood vessels. Pick out the name of the vessels present beside the intestinal wall. This is the intestinal wall. Here we have the blood vessels and the lymphatic vessels. They are written on the picture. Show that small intestine has really a large surface area. So it is written also over here. Since it has many folds called ridges, which in turn have small folds called villi. These enlarge the surface area of the intestinal wall. Indicate the structure in the intestinal wall which is responsible for absorption. This is the structure. It's called villus, or the plural is villi. The second question. We want to compare the nutrients before and after a meal in the blood and lymph. So look, for example, here, first of all, at the similarities. We will find that, first of all, before meal, they all remain constant. So no need to compare these. We only need to compare after a meal. The water and mineral salts in both lymph and blood increase. So we say the concentration of water and mineral salts increases in both blood and lymph. This is the first comparison. I started with the similarities. Now let's go to the differences. We see that the glucose and amino acids only increase in the blood and not in the lymph. So while the concentration of glucose and amino acids increases only in blood. However, whereas the concentration of fatty acids and glycerol increases only in lymph. So these are the three comparisons. So what is the root of each nutrient? You can see that water and mineral salts go to both blood and lymph, while amino acids and glucose go only to blood, and fatty acids and glycerol go only to lymph. What is the biological phenomena that took place? What are we studying? Intestinal absorption. Now let's move to document F. Here we have numbers in the table. And first of all, they say formulate the tested hypothesis. In the text, they say, they talk about the duodenum. And they say that many scientists wondered. When they say wonder, it means that they are making a hypothesis if it is responsible for the absorption of the digested nutrients. So who is it? It is the duodenum. So the hypothesis, duodenum or small intestine is responsible for the absorption of nutrients. Now, if we want to make comparison for the amount of glucose and amino acids before and after a meal, we can see that both of them increase after a meal. So we say the amount of glucose in the blood leaving the duodenum before the meal is 0.8. We should say the values. Less than is the comparison, than that after a meal, which is 1.5 gram per liter. Now, because both of them increase after a meal, we say similarly, not whereas. Similarly, the amount of amino acids in the blood leaving the duodenum before the meal is 0.4. Less than that after the meal, 0.7 gram per liter. Now, what is the suitable conclusion? The conclusion should be related to the hypothesis. And the hypothesis is duodenum and small intestine is responsible for the absorption of the nutrients. Now, how can I transform them into a histogram, these numbers? This is a histogram. A histogram, we draw bars. And I have 2 bars for before a meal, one for glucose and one for amino acid. Similarly for the one after a meal. And we don't forget the scale. And for the x-axis, we don't put an arrow because we don't have numbers. While for the y-axis, we put an arrow. And don't forget the title. Now the last question. Here, they tell us, show that lymphatic vessel doesn't transport amino acids. I want to prove only this sentence. So I only analyze the one related to amino acid. I look at the amino acid. I see that the lymph entering small intestine and lymph leaving small intestine is the same. This alone proves for me this sentence. So we simply say, since the amount of amino acid remains the same at 0.01 gram per liter in the lymph before and after the meal, then I conclude I write the same sentence. The lymph doesn't transport amino acids. Now specify. To specify the absorbed nutrients, we need to make it justify also. So what do we say? For the absorbed nutrients, which ones are the absorbed nutrients? The one that increased, right? So we say fatty acids and glycerol. So I specified them. I said which one are they, and then I justified. Since their amount increases in the lymph from 0.4 to 0.6, the fatty acid, and from 0.2 to 0.5 respectively after the meal. So what is the route? Indicate, just tell me what is the route of the absorption of each nutrient. Glucose and amino acids go into the blood, while fatty acids and glycerol into the lymph. I hope you correct all your mistakes and have a nice day.